Employees must wash their hands before returning to work. You've seen the signs in restrooms. Wash your hands before you eat, your moms have told you. Sanitizers and antibacterial soaps and bleach services are to protect us from spreading germs and making people sick. State regulations govern the handling of deceased persons. Funeral directors are licensed after passing required training. There are laws to respect the dead, but also to prevent diseases from spreading. And these laws follow centuries of tradition and common wisdom. These regulations are the latest versions of sanitation statutes known since ancient times. The book of Leviticus, one of the first 5 of the Old Testament called the Pentateuch, was finally compiled around 500 BC, with earliest material written around 1100 BC. So 30 centuries of wisdom endured. There are good practical reasons for these laws. So in Leviticus chapter 15, the law states that a woman who has excessive bleeding shall be considered unclean, and all her clothes, and where she sits, and anything that touches her are all unclean. A person who happens to brush up against her on a busy street shall be considered unclean. There are good reasons for these laws, and there are consequences for violating these laws. And then a woman slips through crowded streets. For 12 years, she has uncontrolled bleeding. For 12 years, she has suffered this debilitating illness. For 12 years, she struggled with anemia and fatigue and soiled clothes. For 12 years, no one touched her, no human contact. For 12 years, no one hugged her or held her or gave comfort. For 12 years, she was not allowed close to anyone. For 12 years, people stepped back when she came near. For 12 years, she was nobody. And the woman slipped through the streets with only one thought, one purpose: to just put her fingertip on the bottom edge of the outer cloak of the furthest hem, to just brush a finger along a frayed edge. That's all, and it would be enough. The frayed edge of outer cloak touched briefly, and Jesus notices. Who touched my clothes? He felt power flow to heal a woman's flow. And notice this question: who touched my clothes? Not who touched me. Jesus instantly knew what was going on. He said, to say who touched me would implicate a person, accused of violating law, and conjure up a history of punishments. But he tempered the issue from the start, introduced a bit of compassion, and set the tone to invite rather than convict. Who touched my clothes? Neutral, non-accusatory invitation. This woman took tremendous risk to approach Jesus. She could be punished for defiling a man by touching her with her uncleanness. And she could receive the anger of the crowd for coming among them with her defilement. And she could raise the wrath of Jesus for offending him. And Jesus also took tremendous risk. He was now violated according to established law. He stopped for a woman everyone else ignored. He was distracted from an emergency to save the life of a child of an important official. Laws are in place to protect society and citizens. Laws are proven ways to reduce risk of of diseases and dangers. But laws are made by healthy people to protect themselves. Laws are made by people with privileges in order to protect their way of life. Laws are made out of moral consciousness but to control certain circumstances. Laws benefit the insiders, the comfortable, and the privileged. Poor people, sick people, outsiders, marginalized and minority don't get a say in making laws and must take what the power decreed. And there will always be some for whom the laws are unjust. And there will always be some for whom the laws are unfair. And Jesus willingly transgressed such laws, giving priority to people in need. Jesus willingly violated the law from time to time to ensure that people come first. Jesus willingly transgressed the law prohibiting touching an unclean woman, stopped his important business, and set aside a moment of the urgency to rescue a girl from death and turned to a woman in need. And then the most loving words she has heard in years: daughter. Not the formal woman or ma'am, but enduring, affectionate daughter. And she belongs, and she has a place, and she is loved. Daughter. People come first. But in the meantime, the girl died. Jesus dawdled, and a child died. Don't trouble the teacher anymore. He has important things to do. Nothing can be done for you now. And they pull the grieving dad away, uncomfortable with another's pain. Stop! Why all the wailing and crying? Why do you always think the worst? At first it sounds insensitive, Jesus not taking seriously a parent's profound loss. She is not dead, just sleeping. And they laugh. Not a joyous laugh of hope, but the disgusted laugh of incredulity and anger. So Jesus lets none of them in, just the parents and his disciples. A dead child. And he touches. The book of Numbers, the law of God given long ago, reads, anyone who touches a dead body of any person shall be unclean. Twice, in a short walk, Jesus becomes unclean under the law of God. And Jesus willingly transgressed Old Testament laws, giving priority to people in need. Resurrecting the dead seems unbelievable to our enlightened minds, even though we confess it in the Apostles' Creed, and even though we celebrate it every Easter and every Sunday. But set aside the mechanics of this miracle. I won't attempt to explain it. I can't explain it. But notice that Jesus also gives a lost child back to a grieving father, even while transgressing the laws of God. Jesus prioritizes the needs of a person over obedience to the law. People first. Compassion above obedience. Caring over right. Good over policy. It seems Jesus considers the person higher than established procedures and customs and ways of doing things and rules about what goes where. Jesus died on a cross, not for a cause, not for an idea or philosophy, and not for a way of life, but Jesus died on the cross for people. For you, for me, and for the stranger we might not even notice. People first. About the legal and the moral and the way things have always been done. People first.